Barret Edelstein here, your celeb expert and your Celeb Savant. Celeb Savant is a weekly entertainment show. We have long-form career retrospective type interviews with celebrities, singers, actors, and industry experts. Jann Klose is a pop singer-songwriter who has released 7 albums and 2 EPs. He's based in New York City and was raised in Kenya, South Africa, Germany, and Northeast Ohio. He has performed as an actor and singer in touring companies of Broadway musicals including Jesus Christ Superstar, Jekyll and Hyde, and The Who's Tommy, as well as made for TV movies, voiceovers, and commercials. Jann has collaborated and worked with a wide range of artists including Pat Benatar, John Oates of Hall & Oates, Suzanne Vega, Paula Cole, Roseanne Cash, amongst many others. Up next on Celeb Savant, we've got Jann Klose. Where do we find you in the world? How are you doing, and what's happening in your life?
Well, I'm doing great, thank you, Barret. I'm home. I'm at my apartment in New York City. I just got back from South Africa, and then I was out again. I'm in the middle of a tour for my new album Surrender. So I've been basically traveling now for 5 weeks, about almost 6 weeks now. Mm-hmm. So it's been pretty hectic, and every day that goes by that I don't get ill. I'm grateful.
So rather say you're staying healthy. Let's put it that way.
I'm staying healthy. Yeah, I'm doing all right. It's really it's been really great. I have to say it's been a really wonderful experience touring with the new album. Yeah.
So we're going to get into the new album a little bit later, but as a starting point, let's rewind all the way back. So your musical journey in the musical and entertainment world. When did you get motivated or invigorated to start? At what age? And let's jump through the years through your entertainment industry journey.
Sure. It's been a very, I suppose, dramatic in some ways. I was born in Germany, and we lived in Kenya and in South Africa until I was 11.
Okay.
The journey there was a lot of travel, we started traveling when we were kids. It was at a very, very young age. I went to an English nursery in Nairobi. My brother was actually born in Nairobi. And then we lived in Johannesburg, and I attended grade school there, at the German school, at the Deutsche Schule.
Yes.
And my parents divorced there, and my sister, I have a half sister who was born in Johannesburg. So out of the 3 kids, I'm the only one born in Germany, but everyone else is born in Africa.
Okay.
I'm always kind of jealous, I was like, I always wanted to say, look, I was born in Africa, but that was always something like I was like, that would be cool. So yeah, long story short, and then I lived in Germany as a teenager. The music thing really was something that was always there. I think I remember being 8 and telling my grandmother I want to be a singer. Mm-hmm. After listening to American rock, American Top 40 radio, British rock. And I was that kid that was sitting in front of the radio with the tape.
Yeah.
And I was like recording every song that I liked, and that's when you had the tape players on radios.
Sorry, just to interrupt you. While I'm giggling is because I was exactly the same.
Yeah. I loved that. It was wonderful, and I made mixtapes and created imaginary radio shows. And I was, when I was like 8,
It was great, unless the DJ cut the song in the beginning or the end and you only got half of it. So that sometimes happened.
Totally. Yeah. That always upset me, when they would finish the song. I'd be like, damn, I didn't get the whole song. Now I'm going to have to, buy it. There wasn't that kind of support at home. I didn't have a family that said, oh, music. Oh, what a great idea. Here's a drum kit. Because I remember saying, I want to learn how to play the drums. Like we would see so many, African musicians playing, dancing, performing. And that was like magic for me. It was like magic watching people dance and move and play these instruments. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I want to do that. That looks great. They're having so much fun. These people look so happy when they're doing this. But of course, my more conservative German upbringing, they equated that with being poor.
Yeah.
And for a while I was, I mean, there's been some hard times, but things have worked out eventually, but it took a long time, I mean, it took years and years of work. But getting back to the sort of timeline here, so then we lived in Germany I lived in Germany as a teen in Hamburg, which was a great town to live in and grow up in. Then I became an exchange student. I did an exchange student program in the US through American Field Service, and landed in Cleveland, Ohio, in the Midwest, completely different once again, Nairobi, Johannesburg, Hamburg, Cleveland. What? It was like Siberia, but not. It was bizarre and very different, but I mean, Cleveland has a very rich musical history as well.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know much about it. It was just a very typical Midwestern sort of quiet town, kind of segregated then. I mean, this is 20 years ago, but it still kind of is, but it's actually gotten a lot better. Politically, the places that I've been in had always very, very different circumstances. I mean, when we left South Africa, apartheid was still existed. So it was very different, coming back to Germany and then living in America, where you kind of saw similar political structures when it came to society. And then, but Cleveland was really sort of the door, for me to go into music. The family that hosted me, when I said, I think I'd like to sing with the show choir. I think I want to buy a keyboard and teach myself how to play. They were like, yeah, go for it. What are you waiting for? It was a release for me, I was sort of released from a very conservative upbringing to a very liberal, socially liberal anyway, environment, and was able to start pursuing the dream. And then I eventually studied voice there in Cleveland with David Gooding. That was a great experience because I got to sing with the Cleveland Opera Chorus. I sang in 5 operas with them. It was super educational. I sang with the Temple Choir. I sang Jewish music. I sang liturgical music, Christian liturgical music. It was a really wide variety of music that I was exposed to, at age 20. And then I moved to New York and I started auditioning for Broadway shows because I knew I could get work in that environment. Yeah. And got cast in the Who's Tommy and Jekyll and Hyde National Tour, the Broadway tour, Jesus Christ Superstar in Europe. And after that, I got serious about pursuing being a songwriter. And then I started making records. And then, well, as they say, the rest is history, but I slowly started building up that as a career. And I mean, literally, we would, my then bass player and we would tour as a duo in coffee shops, and we would just play any gig that we could get our hands on. And then the return to South Africa is kind of interesting as well, because what happened in 2015 sort of changed my life all over again. And I always promised myself, if I come back to South Africa, it will be through music. It has to be, because I missed it dearly, like I had very, very fond memories of my childhood and travel and just Africa in general. I mean, it's just like hypnotic to be there. For me, it was magic. I loved the country. I loved the culture, the climate, everything. I mean, it was wonderful. Even though, I mean, at the time I had no idea what kind of a bubble I was in, when I was a boy. I really had no clue, until later when I realized, whoa, there was a lot else. There was a lot going on.
I completely relate.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but 2015 was that was magic, because I was randomly contacted through my website by a journalist from the Sunday Times, South Africa Sunday Times. Mm-hmm. And it was a request for an interview that was like, oh, can you speak to being a traveling musician? They had somehow found me or heard about me or whatnot. I said, do you want to do an interview about being a traveling musician? Here's the 10 questions. Would you send these back to me? I said, no problem. I sent the questions back. It was like sort of random questions. Like, what do you do when you're in an airport on a layover? That kind of.
Yeah.
And, like it was cute. Anyway, so I sent the questions back, and then the article ran in the Sunday Times. And the day after that, I got an email from my favorite 4th grade teacher at the Deutsche Schule in Johannesburg at the German school, who was now retired. I just saw her again as well when I was in Johannesburg. And she said, "Hey, is this you? Is this that Jann?" And I was like, "Yes, it's that one." And her name is Traute Riester. And she said, "Oh, this is so cool that you're doing this now, that you have this life as a musician." And I mean, she really was a great teacher. She would she just was like one of those teachers that kind of noticed that I was a little different than the other kids.
Yeah.
And took gave me a little bit of extra attention. And I think she knew, that things weren't always great at home, because there was a lot going on. We started like an email exchange, and she said, "Look, the Deutsche Schule is having a 125th anniversary concert. Why don't you sing at the concert?" And I said, "Sure, can they pay me? Do they have budget?" I was super interested, and she put me in touch with someone at the school, and we figured it out. And it was a big concert, and it was Richard Koch conducted National Symphony, and it was 3 different orchestras and choirs from 3 different German schools: Pretoria, Windhoek, Johannesburg. And I sang 2 songs at the end. I was like a featured soloist guest, and I sang Toto's Africa, and Adele's Skyfall.
Okay.
And which I still sing. It's a great song. And it went over really well. It was there were like a couple of thousand people there. It was a big event. It was a big to do, and it was a great experience, and they took really good care of me. And then I met my now agent in South Africa at the same time, Melissa Conradi. And then she started booking me shows. And one thing led to another, and I was invited to do a BMI writers camp in Cape Town, and met all these South African superstars who I never heard of.
Yes.
And and they were, I mean, the talent pool there was just incredible. And so I started writing songs with RJ Benjamin and James Stewart, Karen Zoid, and Tamara Day, and Zion, Shakana, and Amanda Black. All these people who are just incredibly talented individuals. And my favorite thing is songwriting. I love writing. I love collaborating. I love creating a great song. I'm a big believer in the song. And so are these guys, and I mean, I just saw Tamara. She sang with us at the Johannesburg show, and we have a single coming out in the fall. And, I met DJ Kosher, I just wrote a song with him, so I keep those ties up. And I just played Splashy Fen for the first time, which was an amazing experience, and played in Cafe Rue again in Noordhoek in the Cape. It just developed into this sort of very naturally, I must say, none of it was really forced. It just kind of happened. And I said, okay, this is good, and it ties in well to my markets here in the US that I'm playing and in Germany. So it's really been a wonderful, wonderful journey, very full circle.
Let's go back to songwriting. You mentioned you love writing. From zero to a 3 to 4 minute song, what is that creative process for you? Is it easy every time? Do you always collaborate with someone, or is it sometimes solo projects? Let's dive into your creative world.
Look, it's both. I used to be much more, I would say, antisocial almost with my writing. Okay. I wanted to do it myself, and I didn't want anyone to be involved, and I was probably much more insecure about it. But this is now when I was starting out 20 years ago. So, but as I started building confidence, and this goes back to something that I tell, because I work with talent now myself. I work with singers, I work with songwriters, I produce, I coach. To me, it's about building confidence. And as I built my own confidence through performing, through traveling, through meeting people in the business, and really finding who I was and who I am now, and becoming friends with me. It's a big one. People don't realize how important it is. To accept.
I giggle because I completely relate.
It was through that process that took years of really hard work, of pounding the pavement, quite literally. Crawling along, and sometimes, and then sprinting, and having amazing things happen that were career-changing, life-changing experiences. And then over time, it got to a place where I was able to sustain myself through music. But collaboration really opened a lot of doors, and it's really kind of started with an album I made in 2007 called Reverie. I worked with a producer named Stuart Lerman and another producer named James Frazee. And Stewart is a very well known. I mean, they're both really successful guys now. They like ever since then they've both like won Grammys. They're like they're great guys and fantastic artists and producers in their own right. But it was that kind of collaboration where I slowly sort of like started letting down my guard and letting other people in and trusting, like developing trust with other writers, with producers, with people in the business. And it's a very, very difficult business. It's hard to trust people in this business because a lot of people want to take advantage of you, and it's easy to fall into those traps, and you have to learn what to avoid, and I work with the talent that I work with, I try to make them avoid some of the pitfalls that I didn't. But all in all, I did build slowly, but very independently. I kind of avoided the whole major label world for a while because it just I just felt like it was just full of cracks and not very stable. I think that's maybe a little bit different now. I think the major label world has sort of settled into a very specific system. And then ironically, I did sign with a major. Well, they're actually considered an independent label in South Africa, Gallo, and they're the biggest in South Africa, but they're actually independent. Yeah. Of course, they're now co-owned by, I think, Black Coffee. He owns a stake in them, and who I just ran into at the airport, and I was on this same flight with him to South Africa, to Johannesburg. So we had a nice little flight. Because we know some of the same people, so it's such a small world, and you don't realize it until you're really in it for a while. But like the collaborative process to me is the most satisfying now. But I still write on my own. But my co-writer and I, Alex Forbes, who I wrote most of the songs on Surrender with, 6 of the songs on Surrender. I love working with her. She's like when I started working with Alex, I kind of arrived at a place of, this is me. And if you don't like it, if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. It'll work for someone else.
You mentioned the new album, so tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Surrender was a really crazy process because we had to get very creative about how we were going to make this record because we started making it during the pandemic.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, my co-producer, Marcus, he's really the producer, I take co-producing credit. But Marcus Dembinski and David Schoenwetter first. David Schoenwetter produced Pilot Light and Love You the Most. And those songs blew up. They blew up on YouTube, and they've literally garnered millions of views. And Love You the Most ended up being a top 40 hit on radio here in the US. So there was already a lot of activity from the songs. And then when I started working with Marcus Dembinski, I was like, we have these couple of songs, they were singles, but rather than making more singles, let's make an album. And so how do we do this? Okay, we can't record, we can't meet. So what do we do? Well, we both had home studios. I have one here in Queens, and he has his in Manhattan. And so we just started constructing the skeletons of the songs. We programmed the songs in the very beginning. They were all written and ready to go, except for the last one, even if it takes a lifetime. That came at the end because I felt like we needed a closer for the record. And so everything else was there, and we just started constructing the songs, arranging them. Then as we were able to go back into the studio, we added live musicians. So drums, bass, and additional instruments. And like the bass player, for instance, Max Sternlicht, he played all his bass parts in the beginning, all remotely. Yeah. And I didn't even meet him. He was in Nashville, Tennessee, Max Sternlicht. I didn't even meet him until like 2 months ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We made the entire record, without him ever being in the same room.
Yeah.
It's both a testament to talent and also technology and what we're able to do now versus what we were able to do even a few years ago. So then, as we added live instruments, we were like, this is an album, we have a record. This is going to work. And then Honey Rose, my label, they said, we'll get behind it, and we'll promote it. We'll release it, and we'll do vinyl and the whole bit. And here we are. And, 2 years later, and doing really well so far. So, everyone's pretty happy.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned vinyl. Now, I love personally, a CD. I love the aesthetic of holding it, the images, the thank yous. For me, it's an energy exchange. It's a journey to know, okay, this month I'm budgeting for this CD and that CD, getting it, the excitement, all of that kind of stuff. CDs, albums, or at least vinyls and cassettes are making a comeback. I don't know if you're aware that last year in the UK alone, there were 5.5 million sales of vinyls, the biggest sales since 1990. CDs a couple of years ago as well, increase of sales since first time in 21 years. So we've got the physical and we've got the digital, the downloading the platforms. What is your perception of each and which do you prefer?
Well, I mean, sound-wise, the CD is definitely superior just because of the technology. That is what it is, and you have a much higher sampling rate. And well, there's no sampling on vinyl, obviously, but you have a much broader oral perspective, just as far as frequencies go, because vinyl is limited to that. But vinyl has a very interesting quality to it, and it's an experience. It's much more of a sort of psychological experience, and it's analog. So it's uninterrupted, so to speak. Not that we can notice the difference, but so and then you have streaming, which also is, I mean, it's recognizable to, if you're an audiophile like myself or like you are, sure, you notice the difference, of course, and it all depends on what you're listening to the media on. Yeah. So there are a lot of variables, so I think what's interesting is that what my hope is that it's not really so much about the recorded medium. I think that's always going to play a role, but to me, it's about the in-person experience, the live show.
Okay.
I think that is where the future of music is. And I also hope that that is going to, we're living in a world where people walk around with their phone in front of their face, walking down the street, looking down. People don't make eye contact. They don't even know what's going on around them. So they're so hypnotized by devices, And I remember, I'm young enough and old enough to remember a time before all this, and I loved technology, and like the advent of the internet was super exciting to me, and I love gadgets and devices, but I also feel like we need to connect, and we shouldn't forget this. And I think right now we're on our way to forgetting. Yeah. And I think this generation, younger people, some of them, not all, are very, can be very, very disconnected emotionally. Because they're not used to having the contact that is so essential to, I think, developing social skills, character, but I do think there are a lot of younger people that are very turned off by it also. They're like, social media, hell no, I'm not on that. Yeah. I think you have both of these things going on at the same time. And I'm kind of hoping that we'll go back to a place where, because to me, social media is already dying, because now we have to pay for it. In addition to the fact that they're charging or that social media networks are making money from advertisers. Yes. Now we pay for it too, So
you mean to get higher reach, to get higher views, and all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah. So that's, to me, is like that's the end. That's the beginning of the end, basically. That's basically what cable television is, right? And that's been dying a slow death. The news media, I believe that they play roles, but I think there's so much of it now that you're going to get more insulated environments, and they'll be more insulated, literally. So I mean, you can't, if you're on Twitter, you can't message someone outside of Twitter. If you're on Facebook, you can't message someone outside of Facebook. If you have an email account, if you have a Yahoo email account, you can send and receive emails to anybody on any email address. Think about that for a second. It's decentralized. Email is still decentralized. Yeah. Social media, most social media is not. Mastodon is decentralized. Like what Elon Musk, not Musk, what Elon, I don't even want to talk about that guy. That guy is like, whatever. Yes. I'm not even going to say anything. But like Jack Dorsey, who started Twitter, he's developing a social media called Blue Sky that is decentralized. So, and I think that that's where we're going to go back to, because what's happening now is, you're in a bubble, and you have to pay for it. No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm not going to. I mean,
I love this game. My recipients don't always enjoy it, because you'll understand why in a moment. Now, I know that if I had to ask you this question in 2 minutes, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 hours, I know your answer will be different every time. But if you had to push play to 5 songs by other artists once we finish this chat, what would those 5 songs be and by whom?
Let's see. I would go with...
Yes.
5. I only have 5?
Yes, 5.
That's a lot of fun. I appreciate that. No, I actually like doing this kind of thing. Of course, it will change.
Yeah.
But let's see. Let me start with, you know what? I'm not even going to look at anything because there's too many options. It's going to just get confusing. I Feel It Coming, Daft Punk, The Weeknd, Court and Spark, Joni Mitchell, Hope of Deliverance, Paul McCartney. Two more. Australia by the Shins, and Let's Groove by Earth, Wind and Fire.
Great selection. So, Jann, the podcast is listened to throughout the world. As a final message to the listening audience, what would you like to say?
Thank you for listening to podcasts. It's a wonderful new medium, and I have one myself, and I really love it. It's called Making Sound. Okay. So after you finish this episode, go to my podcast. It's called Making Sound with Jann Klose. Ta-da! Ta-da.
Perfect. So as Jann said, listen to podcasts, promote them, share them. This is Celeb Savant signing out.